up your engine. Common problem with the car. This customer brought over the Civic. It's 2002, 18 years old. And the question is, should he get rid of it? Should he fix it? Or should he just drive it till the wheels fall off? Well, I'm going to show you how you can decide. Now, this Honda's a second car for my customer here. He bought a new Honda, and they were going to give him so little for this Honda that was 18 years old, he just decided to keep it. So, he didn't want to put a bunch of money in it, but if it still can go a while, he'll be happy with it. So we'll go inside the car. I flipped my scan tool up. The only codes it has, the engine's okay. It's just got a code, the airbag system, and another one for the EPS system. So, it runs decently. Airbag system, hey, seatbelts work good when you buckle up. And the electronic power steering system, yes, this may be an 18-year-old Honda, but it still is electric power steering. It's just got this code, 221, excessive change of the vehicle's speed sensor signal. That happens in these. Still steers pretty good. You don't even care about that. So, electronically, mechanically, this thing's in pretty decent shape. And we'll look at the live data just to see if there's anything that looks squirrely. If there's any orange or reds, they're squirrely. Let's go through them. Everything's pretty normal so far. No orange red stuff, blah blah. So, live data's good. Now let's start it up and listen to it. And for the mileage that it has, pretty quiet. It's not making any clacking, no horrible noises. Now we'll check the AC. Still blows freezing cold. Typical Honda, well-made AC. The steering wheel leather's getting a little faded, but the interior still looks pretty good. That's the advantage of cloth interior. Still, it's in pretty good shape. It's even got a sunroof. Now, he was saying it seems to leak some oil. So let's jack it up and see what's leaking. Now we can see the bottom of the engine's got oil, and so does between the engine and the transmission. So I'm going to put some leak dye in this thing. Fluorescent dye oil. Now I ran out of the engine oil. This is for refrigeration systems, but it's an oil. You can pour a little bit in the engine, and then wherever the green comes out, you know that's where the leak is. Just pour it in the engine oil, just a little bit. That's enough. Run the engine a while, maybe half an hour, see where the leaks come out. Then you put on these funky yellow sunglasses, get a UV light, and look for leaks. And I can see two of them. One in the front, and one in the back of the engine. Which isn't great news, but it's not horrible news either. The front seals are leaking a little, and the rear main seal of the engine is leaking between the engine and the transmission. The rear main seal would require either pulling the engine out or pulling the transmission off. And the front seals would require taking the front of the engine apart and putting new seals in. Really more money you'd want to put into this car, but the owner was complaining, it's not even dripping in my driveway yet. Yeah, he might go through a couple quarts of oil in between oil changes, something like that. I'd advise people to live with, or get a bottle of this AT205 reseal. It's a polymer, it can rejuvenate oil seals. You just pour it in the engine, the whole bottle. Just goes right in. It's a polymer. It can rejuvenate the rubber seals. If it works, great. But if not, I wouldn't get rid of this car just because of that. I just add oil and keep driving the thing. Sure, the airbag system doesn't work anymore. Electronic power steering has some minor glitch to it, but it's still a real solid little car with a quiet engine and a standard transmission that can last forever. Now I'll take it for a little spin. Typical Honda. Starts right up. Now it's a Honda Civic, so it's not a race car, but we'll wait till this guy gets out of the way so we don't freak him out. When we give it some gas, it still burns rubber. Yeah, these little Civics, man, they can just tear it up. And it's still got very stable handling and steering. He was whining about the struts, but they're not that bad. It's a bumpy ride, it's a Civic, but man, it can still go. And it still handles, like I said, quite well. Corner's good. It's a Civic. You're gonna feel the bumps. This isn't a luxury car. It's a Civic Si, which is made for sporty driving. I wouldn't get rid of this thing. All in all, it's still a great little car. Yeah, it's 18 years old, but it still runs pretty good. You just forgive the foibles that it has. Don't put a ton of money in it. But on the other hand, don't throw the baby away with the bathwater. It's still a good knock-around car. And being an SI, it's still a pretty stylish car. Yeah, the paint's faded on the back, the plastic spoiler, but what the heck, you can repaint that or paint it black. So now you know the truth about this car. When to hold them, when to fold them. In this case, I definitely hold them. And here's some bonus questions and answers. Nathan Arando says, Scotty, the 2018 F-150 V8s have sleeveless cylinders and having oil consumption problems. What's up with Ford? Yeah, you know, I kind of wonder too, because I used to really like their V8s and stuff. And I have a customer the other day, he came over complaining. He says this thing's burning 3 quarts of oil between oil changes. And I checked everything up and it was all internal engine wear. The reason it was burning oil had nothing to do with a PCV system or anything. Yeah, they just screwed up on those things. It's unfortunate, but, you know, they're trying to make things cheaper, and it's not working out. When they sleeve things down, they work fine. That's the problem with aluminum. Aluminum is real soft. If you're going to make an aluminum block, you really have to sleeve it down with stainless steel or cast iron, whatever, and it's going to last a long time. They screwed up, and now people bought them, and they're stuck with oil-burning engines. It's really a shame, but that's the problem in our society these days. The bean counters take over. How can we make it cheaper so we can make more profit? And then you end up with products like that burn oil when they shouldn't, and then they're not going to rebuild all those engines for free unless somebody forces them to, because it would cost them a fortune. It's sad, but that's what's happening these days. That's why you got to listen to guys like me that'll tell you the truth. Say, hey, this has problems, it doesn't. Don't buy the one that had problems. And as I always say, never, ever buy the first year model of anything when it's a new design. Who knows? Nobody knew that Honda was going to have oil dilution problems. They first came out, they didn't find out until a year, 2, 3 years later. That's why you don't ever want to buy a new technology until it's been proven for a few years. It only makes sense. Fat Loco Product says, should I buy a $400 06 Civic that needs the clutch changed? If it is okay, otherwise the engine runs good and stuff, go right ahead. If you're mechanically inclined, it's a very small car. You can buy an entire clutch kit aftermarket for maybe $120. Wouldn't take more than 4 or 5 hours if you got a jack stand stuff, because it's a little light car. It's not hard to take it apart. And that's the only thing that's wrong. Go right ahead. It can be a great car to drive around in. And if a guy's too lazy, or these days mechanics rip people off too much. I mean, back in the day, I used to put a clutch in those things for $250, parts and labor. And now some guys are pumping over $1,000 to put a clutch in. But like I say, for $120, you can get the whole thing now and do it yourself if you want. Watch one of my videos, how to replace a clutch on a car. You'll see it's not rocket science. Anthony Pastana says, Scotty, do you recommend oil catch cans in all or most GDI engines? I would recommend them in the GDI engines that only have GDI injectors, because they will all have a tendency of carboning up the engines. It doesn't matter. But take the modern Toyota ones. They have dual systems. They have both port injectors that clean the valves and GDI injectors, higher pressure, more power, and better fuel economy. Those, you don't need an oil catch can. It'd be a waste of time. But let's say you're buying a Volkswagen with a GDI injection, you better put one on. I've seen those Volkswagen engines that were so thick, you had to get a sand blaster, and instead of putting sand in it, you'd put walnut shells, because that won't eat up the aluminum on the heads and blast the carbon up. They got so bad. Neil Carey says, Scotty, what do you think of a used 2011 Toyota 4Runner with 190,000 kilometers for $20,000 Canadian? Okay, well, kilometers are a lot less than miles, and $20,000 Canadian these days is a lot less than $20,000 US, unfortunately. They're great vehicles. I would try to pay less if I were you. With that kind of mileage, I would still try to pay less. Now, if you can't, you want the vehicle, go ahead and get it. They're great vehicles, and they go 300,000-400,000 miles, not kilometers or miles. But I'd always try to pay less. I mean, that's just the way it goes. But they're very popular, and if that's what they're going for in your area and you want one, go ahead. But always listen to Scotty. Have a mechanic check it out before you buy, because you can't trust anybody, even Canadians, when it comes to selling used cars. People lie, cheat, and steal when they sell used cars, and you got to get it checked out by a mechanic who knows what he's doing. Bruce Snyder says, opinion on the Genesis G70 3.3 TT Car of the Year. Well, Car of the Year awards don't mean anything to me, because those are journalists who get wined and dined and try the cars out, and they know if they say these cars all stink, that they won't give them cars to try anymore, and they're getting free cars to drive around. So their advice is pretty much useless for most things. Genesis are better made cars than they used to be. They're no longer Hyundai Genesises. They're just Genesises. Their own brand, right? But it's still the same company that's making them. They're fun to drive. As they age, they cost too much to fix. If you watched my video, I had a customer with the Hyundai Genesis. It had 120,000 miles. And I checked it with my scanner, and it showed all 4 of the cams had wear in it. 3-4% wear, right? The Lexus I was working on, it had more mileage, and it had almost nothing. Instead of 3 or 4% wear, to be 0.25%. Practically nothing. It just shows they're cheaper made, they're not going to last as long. If you're the type of guy buys a vehicle, gets rid of it before it gets 100,000 miles, you might be happy with one of those things. They don't fall apart, but they're not going to last like a Lexus or a Toyota or a Honda or an Acura. The engines are not that well made to last. They just don't hold up as well. They're not as quality built in the long run. So if you never want to miss another one of my new car repair videos, remember to ring that bell.